Now, as it stands in Diablo 2 Resurrected, the standard of heroes has no use. What if I told you this one little change could give it an absolutely amazing use that probably nobody would be against? Now, before you unsubscribe and hit the thumbs down button, I will forewarn you before you get crazy triggered. This is actually a great idea that I kind of stole from Diablo 4. Now, for the uninitiated or like newer people, this right here is the standard of heroes. Now, what exactly is these things right here? Well, they're actually a byproduct of after you go through and kill Ubers to go ahead and get your torches. This is an item they gave you kind of as a trophy, just to kind of show off, hey, look, you actually completed the hardest task in all of Diablo 2 Resurrected, taking out the Ubers and getting your torch or farming up torches. But nowadays, really honestly, farming torches, not the most difficult thing. Is you can find everything on the internet, like boom, instantaneously. You can find all the little tips and tricks that makes really farming Ubers with a character like the Uber Smiter incredibly simple. So having a trophy to kind of signify and show that you actually did it, not much of a use nowadays. So it not having a use kind of got me thinking while I was live streaming, kind of spitballing with my chat, what idea could we come up with that would kind of be a great idea for this? Now, the first thing is people farming Ubers over and over again to get their torches, like a ton of them on ladder. You can end up with a lot of these. And the thing is, people just let them disappear into the ether. They just go ahead and poof, they leave them in the game. They don't even take them with them. So we got to take into consideration that there's going to end up being quite a few of these on ladder. So they can't end up being something that's absolutely insane, but just something that would give them a use that really everybody would use. Just a small boost that, you know, you'd kind of be stupid to not go ahead and just take advantage of it. So a good thing came to mind, and that was from back some of my prior time playing Diablo 4. Now, I haven't played the new season. I'm not really a huge fan of Diablo 4, but that doesn't mean everything in the entire game is absolutely dog. And one of those good things that they did end up putting into Diablo 4, at least for a time period, was an item called a Profane Mine Cage. Now, this mine cage is an elixir that, when consumed, increases the drop rates for a particular item, Aberrant Cinders in Diablo 4. But the important part, the part that I personally would steal, is that when you use that elixir, it actually increases the monster levels for the Helltide areas by 10 levels. So the Helltides, they're kind of like overlooked a lot nowadays in Diablo 4, from my understanding. Like I said, I don't really play it anymore. But at the time, Helltides were a great place to go ahead and blast and level and get a bunch of materials and stuff like that. So at a point, Helltides would end up not being that difficult. And if you wanted more experience from the Helltides, you could go ahead and bump the levels up for that area by 10 using these Profane Mine Cages. And if you're going to go ahead and kill a monster in an area, you better might as well use one. Now, it didn't make Helltides incredibly OP or crazy or insane, but it was just good to get that little extra boost. And I think for the standard of heroes right here, we should do the exact same thing. Now, of course, Diablo 2 Resurrected, we don't have Helltides, but we do have something called Terror Zones. And at a certain point, you actually end up, you know, just absolutely blasting a lot of these Terror Zones. Now, there's one thing we could do. Go ahead and use the standard of heroes to raise the level of the monsters in that area up by 10. Then when you have a full party and you're absolutely blasting it down, you can go ahead and get even faster experience. Now, I think we should probably add a stipulation to this, though, because if it does raise them by 10, people are just going to be slamming Terror Zones solo, getting more experience solo. So using the standard of heroes, getting that plus 10 levels, it should only apply when there are actually a full party of 8 people in an area. Now, I'm not absolutely married to that particular idea. Maybe you could do 4 or more in a particular area, especially since on Switch, I think you can only have 4 people in a game at once. But tying it to actually having to be in party play, I think would be an important thing. So that would be making this only kind of a use for ladder. Let me know what you think about that particular idea down in the comments. But there's another thing that chat, I don't know how great I think this particular idea would be, but you can let me know this down in the comments as well. But my chat actually wanted this to double the density of monsters in those Terror Zones. Now, the thing is when you actually double the density, what that effectively would do would be doubling the drop rates essentially as well, because when you have an area of effect, maybe something like Nova, when you telestomp a pack, you flash it all down. If there's 20 monsters, they get flashed down in 1 second. If there's 40 monsters, they get flashed down in 1 second. So killing twice as many monsters effectively would double the drop rates. So that's why I'm not 100% sold on that particular one. Maybe like a 1.25 density or 1.5 density. I could kind of be talked into whatever one everyone thinks is probably the best. Now, how long would this particular effect last? I think that should last for only 1 game. So it's not like you can just spam every single Terra zone forever and ever and ever at this higher level, getting the extra density. Now, there would end up being a ton of these on ladder probably, but also they would get used up incredibly fast. So people would have to come to the determination, am I going to trade this to somebody who could give me something valuable? Perhaps I need a Vex rune, so I'll trade them 10 of these things for the Vex, or 20, or whatever the value ends up shaking out at. Or am I going to go ahead and use these, save them up for when there's terrorized cows? Perhaps I'll use it on the TZ Chaos Sanctuary. So you'd really have to kind of like make decisions where you're going to use them at. Now, some may think that doing this little like bump up on the standard of heroes could do something to like break the game. Maybe you're a bit nervous. Now, I personally am anti-change guy, and all the thinking and all the different scenarios I've kind of thought about, I don't really see how it could break the game in order raising the monsters 10 levels, and maybe even the 1.25 density is probably my favorite right there. I don't think either one of those could actually break the game in any way. Now, the standard of heroes, they're required to be level 90 already, and I think that should stay exactly the same. I don't think anyone should be able to use these unless they're at least at level 90. Now, not quite at this area, but maybe a few levels higher. If you go ahead and create the game, the Terra zones are actually high enough level already, and that makes the monsters high enough level and being a high enough treasure class to where all the monsters can drop all the different items in the game. Now, even just a standard Rockanishu looking Fallen can go ahead and drop you a 45 life Grand Charm nowadays. Those used to only be able to drop off certain monsters that were high enough level: Baal, Diablo, and Neelithak. They were the only monsters in the game high enough level to drop those items, but now even just standard regular monsters in those super high level terror zones, if you're a super high level character, can drop all those. So if you make the level requirement to use this high enough to where all the monsters can already drop all the items, bumping their level even higher actually does nothing for the actual drops that come from the monsters. All it would do is make them, well, harder. They'll do a little bit more damage, have a little bit more life, and you'll get a little bit more experience. Now, the density increase could be argued that that would then skew the drop amounts that you actually get, not the drop rates from individual monsters, but the number of drops you get from one game, because let's be honest, you kill more monsters, you get more drops. Pretty simple concept right there. But I think if we keep that number low enough, like 1.25 density, it would be like a kind of like an insignificant amount of change in the overall Diablo 2 economy. But you would feel like you're getting a little something out of actually using these standard of heroes. So I thought this was a pretty good idea to steal from Diablo 4. I know a lot of people in my community and just Diablo 2 players in general aren't big fans of Diablo 4, but yes, not literally everything about the game could possibly be terrible, right? And this Profane Mind Cage I thought turned out pretty good for Diablo 4. But either way, regardless of the Diablo 4 stuff, let me know what you think of these ideas for the standard of hero changes, and let me know any ideas that you've had or something that could be a use for the standard of heroes. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Peace out, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already before you go, and keep slaying.